Hi, my name is Denise Chambers and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, I'm happy to have you here. If not, welcome back. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, you know I'm going to tell you, don't forget the notification bell so you can see all our upcoming videos. This is the channel where we're bringing keys to legacy.
When all you need is a friend. No, I won't ever hear excuses. We're in this till the end.
So I have to share with you today. I know when you're purchasing a home, it's a big investment, right? And you have to make a deposit. And we want to make sure that you don't jeopardize that deposit. So when you're working with a real estate agent, you want to be knowledgeable as well. And you want to ask them certain things to make sure that you are protected. You want to make sure that your escrow is protected as much as possible so that when you get out of that contract, you do not lose your hard-earned cash, dollars, money, otherwise known as escrow deposit or earnest money. Stick around so you can know how you can get out of that contract without losing that. Number 2, if the property is subjected to a lease, that is, a tenant is already in place, and after you purchase that particular house, you want the tenant to remain in that house, then it is subject to a lease or what is known as a post-occupancy. Speaking about Florida, for example, now what will happen in this instance is that after the effective date, and what I mean by effective date, it means the date that all parties to the contract, the buyer and the seller, agrees to the terms and conditions in the contract, and you're all clear and good to go. So you agree on the closing date, you agree on when your loan approval should be, all other conditions that will be required in the contract. When you agree on that, then you sign, each party sign, and then the last person that signed, that is the effective date. So 5 days after the effective date, in Florida, for example, the seller should provide you with the lease for the tenant that is already in the house. Now, you will get a chance to look over the lease, and if you do not like what the lease has to offer, then you can terminate the contract and you can also get your deposit back. But that only works if in the contract there is going to be post-occupancy or there is a lease already in place and you decide to keep that tenant on after you close on that property. Number 3, financing period or financing contingency. We also sometimes look at this as good faith or due diligence. Now, when you're on the contract, right, we're not talking about pre-approval now. The buyer, if you're not purchasing cash and you are taking a loan, then typically you have like 21 days to get loan approval, or sometimes the default in the Florida contract is actually 30 days. But of course, you can negotiate with the seller. How many days do you want for the lender to actually give you approval for the loan to purchase this home? So now once you're on the contract, typically, we spoke about effective date, typically you can be like a 21 days for loan approval, or it could be a 30-day window for loan approval. So now within that time frame, you will have to exercise good faith and due diligence to obtain a loan. That is also known as the loan approval period. And you want to make sure that by the time that 21 day expires or 30 days expire, the lender should say to you that you are approved for the loan. Now, what do I mean by due diligence? Due diligence means on the part of the buyer that whatever the mortgage lender or the mortgage loan originator asks you for, whatever documentations, to get the loan approved, that you provide them to the lender as quickly as possible. For me, when I'm working with my buyers, I always say to them, if the lender asks you for document A, B, and C, act on it as if it was needed yesterday. So you have to put some urgency to it because the clock is ticking, ticking, ticking. Now, if you see that you are approaching, say, day 21, which could be what is in your contract, you want to make sure that you're close to the loan approval, because if you pass that date, the seller is going to assume that you're moving forward with the contract. And even if you don't get loan approval, I know in Florida, for example, that is seen as if you are now a cash buyer. So if you're approaching close to the loan expiration date, say it's 30 days for loan approval or 21 days, and you're not going to be approved, there are two things that you can do. You can notify the seller as quickly as possible that you will not be approved for the loan and you intend to terminate the contract. If you do that before the loan approval period expires, then you should get back your deposit. If you don't, exercise due diligence and good faith and you let the loan period expires, the seller will assume that you are moving forward and it's not going to be seen as a cash transaction. And if you're not able to close, the seller may be able to go after your deposit. So it's very, very important that you pay attention to the timeline, you speak to your agent, and that you get that done because we don't want you to lose that deposit. So in the contingency period, there's also a deadline. It's usually 20 days or 21 days or 15 days or 30 days after the effective date. I have two examples, one where I had to terminate the contract and one where I had to ask for an extension of the loan approval period. So I had to ask for an extension of the loan approval period because I had a buyer who is an engineer and he was approved for a certain amount, right? Then he changed job. Now, so he changed job, but he was still in the same field. Now, according to the lender, because he changed job, he had to prove that he was in this new job for at least 30 days and to provide the space stub and all of that before he could finally be, fully approved because he was now in the underwriting process. So what I had to do is that I had to seek an extension, not a closing date extension, but I had to seek an extension for an additional 30 days for the loan approval period. Thank God it was just at the beginning of COVID and the seller was really considerate and was able to give us the extension for that one. So that really worked out great because at the end of the day, if the extension for the loan approval was not granted, then I definitely would have to terminate that contract to make sure that the buyer escrow is actually secured. Now, the second one where I had to terminate the contract was that the buyer was already pre-approved for a certain amount. And in the pre-approval process, the file was not underwriting, they had completed their inspection, and their credit score dropped. Yes. They were already at the lower end, they were doing FHA, the credit score had dropped below the mark for approval. And so, keeping in touch with the lender, we realized that this client would not be able to close or they would have to wait a longer time, and the seller was not willing to wait on that because they had other offer. And so what we had to do before the deadline, we went ahead and terminate the contract, and so the buyer was able to retain his deposit. So those were two examples. You want to find out one of two things: is either you are going to terminate the contract before the loan approval period expires, or if you're not going to terminate the contract, you want to speak to your agent to make sure that they can extend the loan approval period. Because if you don't do one of two and you're moving forward, the seller is going to assume that you're going to get the loan approved, and if it's not approved, it's going to be seen as a cash. And I'm speaking specifically for Florida in terms of the as-is contract that we have in Florida. So you want to speak to your agent about that. Number 4, inspection period. Now, this is also a part of your due diligence. Now, in Florida, for example, when you're using certain contract, you may have a default like 15 days. Of course, you can negotiate how many days you want for inspection. Some may do 10, some may do 7. It depends on the property. It depends on how long it's on the market. And you can use it as a condition to, try and see if you can get your offer to be accepted. Now, back to how we get out of the contract. So you're going to go ahead and you may have, say, for example, I typically do like 10 days inspection depending on what type of property and what's going on in the area and what's going on with the market. And so the buyer get a chance to go into the home with someone that is certified to see if that property is in an acceptable form. Now, when you're viewing the home for the first time, there are things that you're going to not see in the home, and some things that you're not an expert at. Likewise, myself as a real estate agent, I'm not an expert on that. I'm not an expert when it comes to panels. I'm not an expert I'm not a roofer. So you want to make sure that you get a certified inspector to come through and to inspect the property and do a report. Now, you can, within that time frame, again, there's always a deadline in the contract for everything. So you have to make sure you abide by the deadline. Now, your inspection, say if your inspection period is 10 days, right? You want to make sure that within that 10 days, you decide that you're going to either move forward. If you did an inspection, you go through the report and you think everything is okay, you're going to move forward. If it is that you're not going to move forward, then you need to notify your agent that you want to terminate the contract. Now, if you terminate the contract within the inspection period, then you will definitely get your escrow back. That's important to know. You don't even have to do the inspection. If you wake up and you say, oh, I don't like this place because it doesn't have insect. It doesn't matter what the reason. You don't have to give the other party any particular reason. If you decide that you want to change your mind, you can do that and you will definitely get your escrow money back, and in this instance. What you need to understand though is that when you terminate the contract, you will not get any money for the inspection that you did. So if you complete an inspection with an inspection company, whatever they charge you, that is going to be the loss undertaken by you. However, your escrow will be secure once the agent submits a release and cancellation saying that you no longer want to move forward and you're still in the inspection period deadline. Number 5, not able to get a clear and marketable title. Now, it is the title company, once you're on the contract, to make sure to do their own research, to make sure that you get a free, clear and marketable title, to make sure that there's no cloud, there's no defect, there's no problem with the title. So when it is transferred over to you, no liens are transferred over to you, no violations are transferred over to you, among other things. So they're going to do their title search, and if there's anything that comes up on that title, they want to make sure that it is cleared before it's transferred over to you. Now, if you are able to work with the title company and they notify you that there is a cloud on title or there's a defect, you as the buyer can notify the seller. I know I'm speaking specifically to Florida now. If you're in another state, you want to make sure that you speak with your real estate agent. But for example, in Florida, you're able to notify the seller of the defect, right? And ask them to cure that defect within 30 days. After you give them the notice, they will have about 30 days to clear that defect. If it is that they are unable to clear that defect after 30 days and you notify them, then within 5 days they should be able to return your deposit and any money that you have paid for closing at that time as well. And so you should be free and clear from that contract, because you can't get free and clear and marketable title. I have a perfect example of that. I have a seller who purchased a condo, and he purchased that condo at an auction. And when we were close to closing, the title company realized that there's a cloud on title or a defect. Now, that seller had purchased that property and they had not, the previous owner, who was now deceased, did not have a satisfaction of mortgage. And so the whole process would have to go through what is known like a probate, and it would have taken a little while for that to be done. Now, the buyer notified the seller that they need to clear the defect within 30 days, and the seller was not able to do that, and so they had to return the deposit free and clear. The only thing that you would have lost at this stage, again, would have been, for example, your inspection money. You would have also lost like your appraisal fee. And if you had applied to an association, for example, in Florida, you have an association. If you did an application for the association, then you would have lost that money as well. At this juncture, any documents that you have that belongs to the seller, you definitely want to return those documents. For example, if it's a condo, you want to return the condo documents so that the seller can have them. And that's another way that you can terminate the contract and make sure that your deposit is safe and returned to you because you worked so hard for it. So those are some of the things that you want to consider. Now, every state is different, every contract is different, but you want to speak to your agent to find out, how can I terminate my contract without losing my escrow deposit or my earnest deposit? So there you have it. Those are some of the things that you can do to make sure that you actually secure the key to your legacy. Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share some love over here. Okay, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can see our upcoming video. Wait. There's gonna be a video popping up right here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Make sure you watch that video as well. Until next time, be safe.